Hello everybody, Adrian Plus here.
Yes, and Bridget. Hello.
And what a week in politics. They're saying a week is a long time in politics. It's becoming a rather tedious time in politics in a way. But do you think we're at the beginning of an end or a change
Who
or
knows?
something
Who knows?
better or different or?
Well, I hope so. I suppose what I really hope is people would stop just picking at each other and trying to pull each other down. It's like the playground, isn't it? Where you grab hold of people and try and sort of, I don't know, pull them to the ground almost.
Well, I'm amazed.
Like
I mean, we
really.
watched. Were you watching the first the PMQ's Prime Minister's question?
Yes.
I mean, some of the questioning was quite ugly in its aggression,
Yeah.
wasn't it? And
Yeah.
I mean, I know behind the scenes people are rather different, but I don't know. They were both clearly very prepared for that
Yeah.
time, and Rishi Sunak had answers to everything and not answers to all the things he hadn't got an answer to. So he sounded very confident. I just hope that ordinary people who are trying to live through this will be able to manage over the next year or two. I know it's a really difficult time,
Oh, it
and
is.
I hope we've got some good hearts in that
I mean,
government.
autumn is such a stunningly glorious period, isn't it? But I can't think of an autumn where there's so much fear about the winter as this. But maybe there was. I mean, having said I can't remember that, there was a year which was all strikes, wasn't there?
Yeah,
Where the light was going off, the heating was going off, everything was going off and then on. And I mean, it was a long time ago.
I don't think I noticed autumn during COVID much. Autumn, as everybody in the world who's ever heard me talk about anything knows, is one of my favourite times of the year. But I think this particular one has been very vivid. And the trees up here in the north,
I think they're everywhere.
they look amazing. They're really, really
Absolutely.
look as though they've been put under the grill, don't they? And they're a wonderful colour. And I've written loads of things about autumn over the time. Some are in my head. I remember writing this autumn's burning sadness that has always made me cry for things that have to end. And that feeling that you're coming to the end of the times that people automatically enjoy, like spring and summer. And the autumn has these flashes of brilliance when autumn sunshine, once or twice this year, has brought utter joy to my heart. But at the same time, I think there are pressures on us and on everyone at the moment that make us very concerned about what happens next. What happens next?
I think for me, autumn has always been a really special time because of the patterns that happen in autumn. I mean, as a child, suddenly you're supposed to have your gloves on and your woolly hat on, and bonfire night was always incredibly important to me as a child.
I always enjoyed bonfire night.
Yeah, and I think it was for our children because you could have a few fireworks in the garden, and I can't even remember the Golden Raid never really quite stood up, and all the other ones, the Mount
Well, I think
Vesuvius,
the fireworks was a bit like collecting your photographs after they were developed in the old days. You always thought maybe one of them would be all right. So when you lit your fireworks, you thought maybe one will be a fantastically brilliant explosion of light and colour. But I loved it. I loved it with the children in the garden and the food and all that. Yeah,
I mean, the Catherine wheel that always got stuck on the tree, and then would you dare to go towards it and get it moving again or not? But I think it was, for me as well, Adrian, as a child, it was my father, used to love putting the garden to bed. And that involved going and getting lots of leaves from the woods nearby where we lived, and then digging them into the soil for leaf mould. And
well, you dug up the leaf mould, didn't you?
Well, yes, you did dig it up, I suppose, and bring it back in a wheelbarrow. And because we had these woods near our house, didn't we? And then you dig it in, and there was a lot of talk about putting the garden to bed. And I think that gave a very positive feeling for me, because it was a feeling that it was only sleeping. the winter was only sleeping, and that everything was going to come back again.
So the garden would get up again in
the
the
garden
morning
would get up again,
one
and you
day.
had to cut it back and make it all tidy so that it could spring into action again.
Yeah.
So yes, I think I have a lot of positiveness. And you say, about Burning Sadness, it's always made you cry. I'm not sure it did make me cry. I think it was a very cosy experience for me, really.
Well, I suppose I had to develop from being an agnostic about good coming from not good in my own life as a child, and develop a belief that things can change for the better. And I think in a funny sort of way, the change of the seasons, certainly autumn to winter, was and still is a little bit like that in me. It's the thing between hope and despair. But I do remember, because I know you've often talked about it, when we were at school, the clocks go back, and they do this week, and that wasn't that strange.
Well, yes. I mean, I suppose because both you and I as children would have walked home from school. We wouldn't have been picked up in a car. We'd have walked.
Well, I certainly wasn't picked up.
And so suddenly it wasn't quite so safe.
Yeah.
It was puddly and dark. But
it was suddenly dark, wasn't it?
Suddenly dark, exactly.
Because suddenly someone had stolen the afternoon. And where it had gone.
And you'd look out of the school window, wouldn't you? You'd look
Yeah.
out of the classroom window and it would be dark out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
And apparently
strange.
someone had stolen all the timepieces, I thought, when I was little, because they said the clocks were going back. I remember thinking, what clocks? Where are they going to?
Did you really?
Yes, I did. I thought they must be... Well, it's like the national anthem, Send Her Victorias. I thought they were plums.
I know you did.
So a queen storing up these huge vats of plums. But no, suddenly you were walking home from school and the night had crept up early. And I remember where we were, you had to walk over this quite rough bit of ground where there was a pond. And it was
So were you,
it was
you remember
eerie.
being scared?
Not exactly scared, just confused. There's a poem, isn't there, about a little boy who can't understand why you have to go to bed in the summertime when the sun's shining, and suddenly it all turns around in the winter when the clocks go back. It's really a really significant time for me, and putting it into words kind of takes it to pieces in a way, which often happens when you do try to do that. But there is I suppose, a pattern, isn't there, that is built into us because of the seasons. I don't know if it is with everybody.
Do you know, I fear that for children now it won't be quite the same. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm being silly, but I mean, obviously big organised firework displays are amazing things, but is it quite the same as going down your own garden in the dark? And I don't know. Being picked up from school very often, especially when you're young now, because it wouldn't be safe to walk home. But there was something, as you said, Adrian, about the slight scariness, and yet that feeling of safety when you got home. I wonder whether that's something that our children and children's children won't experience in quite the same way, really, that safety of getting home and feeling you're home.
We did love when our children were little, autumn was a wonderful time, wasn't it?
Well, it was conkers.
Dropping them in the bath and going for walks and coming back.
Dropping them in the bath, yes.
Cleaning them
what you
up and sitting by the fire and yeah, they were nice times.
And the whole conkers thing, where
yeah.
you go and collect far too many conkers simply because they're so beautiful.
Yeah.
And then there was all sorts of terms, weren't there, for the different conkers, and there were all sorts of ways of cheating with conkers, and I remember our children taking that very seriously. It never seeming to
never
have
made any
effect.
sense, did it? Because if you had a 20er and you were beaten by somebody else, their conqueror became a 21er.
I know.
Which didn't make any sense at all, because they'd only actually won with one. Speaking of the natural world, though, I was out in my chair today, my electrically powered chair.
Not your electric
No,
chair.
not
your
my
power
electric
chair.
No. The idea of driving an electric chair around the streets is bizarre, to say the least. I've got some awful horror film. No, in my electrically powered chair, which is giving me the freedom to ride freely around the co-op. Now,
Well, and you love
you
every
ask?
bit of it. So
No, I'm
that's
saying
fine.
the freedom is something else. It really is. But today, the leaves were quite thick on the ground, and the rain had fallen, and I managed to make my way over curbs and up curbs and along pavements. You have to be a bit careful with this chair, but it's very, very good. But then I came to a very leafy place with a downward slope, and suddenly the front wheels, which are quite small, swerved on the wet leaves. The leaves didn't hold there was no traction for the front wheels, and it was very strange to have something which is really very stable and which I'm learning to trust, swerving out of my control, and I had to stop. Fortunately, the brakes operate when you stop accelerating it, but it was strange to have an enemy in the leaves, because I've always loved them.
Yeah, and you would tune in very well, wouldn't you, to National Rail, or, it was always leaves on the track, wasn't it? That was the reason that trains were late.
Yes, that's right.
It always seemed to me a bit silly, but clearly you now have the experience of the danger of leaves on the track.
Do you think that this pattern I was talking about, I mean, the pattern of you don't get summer unless you go through winter. I mean, we're in autumn. You can't stop in autumn. You can't make summer come any quicker. You have to go through autumn. A lot of people look forward to Christmas, some don't. Then you go through January, which is probably the most depressing month for many people. And then suddenly little flowers come out, you're in spring, and you realise it's true again, that it happens again. And I don't know, maybe the same pattern in a way with crucifixion, resurrection, that you don't get the one without the other. And the logic of that is not something I'm capable of going into. But there is a pattern in the world, in life, in us, in the seasons,
absolutely,
that says
things have got to die in order
things
for
have
them
got
to
to
come
die.
alive again.
And on Good Friday, it's very real and almost tangible, isn't it? The Friday is when Jesus dies. The Saturday is when his followers and his family probably and his friends thought, he's screwed up, he's gone, he's dead. And then he's back. So that pattern isn't. It's in everything, I think.
I think it is, and I think it's even in things like hope. Sometimes we despair so quickly that, I mean, I'm using hope very broadly, really, but that, the things we'd expected or hoped to happen don't seem to be happening, or seem to have a hope, something we were planning to do that we know now we're not going to be doing. That's all to do with this sort of dying, but sometimes I can't explain it really, but I mean, sometimes you have to let things go, don't you? You have to let the thing that you'd hoped would happen go, the thing that you thought yourself would be go, and in a way put it to bed, allow and look after it and wait gently for when it will start reviving again.
It's very hard to wait gently, isn't it?
Well, it is, but I mean, I do think we can't bear people to be in that darkness, so we try and hustle them through to spring,
that's
if you
really
like.
Interesting. And I was the other day, and you know my psychology better than anybody in the world.
Oh, do I?
Fascinating, I'm sure it is.
Sure,
but,
loads of people are really envious.
I'd
Adrian.
forgotten this bit I put in a book years ago, and I haven't read it for years. And it was about how at night, when I was a small child, I would get out of bed frightened. And I vaguely knew that if I went out of my bedroom and turned left, I would be going towards my parents' room.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that if I could get there, I would be all right. I would be safe. So I would get halfway along the landing, and I can still remember having one hand on the wall and one hand on the radiator on the other side of the landing. And I stood there sometimes for a long, and I mean a long time, between the fear and the removal of fear. But this is the thing that intrigues me, and probably might make people finally think I've gone round the bend. It wasn't just that I was nervous and didn't know where to go when I walked on. It was because there was something sweet about the darkness. There was something...
Knowing that there was safety, though.
I suppose. I don't think it was that. I think that for me, there's always been a difficulty in achieving reality with total okayness. And I think to be in the dark and to have both hands anchored, there's something in that I think, looking back, probably I could have done, but do you remember you used to talk about Jesus, the shoelace tire? I think as a little boy, I could have done with that. What did you mean by that when you talked about that?
Oh, well, I was talking about walks, wasn't I, that we used to do with children in care. You needed somebody up the front, very vigorous, leading the way. You needed someone in the middle being an encourager. But then my role was to be, if you like, the shoelace tire, sort of urging along the asthmatic boy and pulling the very large, overweight, grumpy one and keeping them going. And I think sometimes I have felt that about Jesus, that he goes back, constantly goes back, stops. Whether it's the woman with the issue of the blood, he stops. He didn't have to. That's what intrigues me, that the healing had happened. He didn't have to stop, but he did, in order to tie her shoelaces, if you like, in order to make her complete, in order to... I suppose tying shoelaces, having had 3 boys, all of whom seemed to determinedly have shoelaces that were not done up, therefore risking stability and safety and all sorts of things. Maybe that's what I meant. I don't know quite how that fits with what you were saying.
We've met a number of people who wish he'd been there.
Yeah.
At times in their lives when things were really, really bad and difficult. Wish he'd been there to not just tie their shoelaces, but find a way out of dark places where they found themselves. And you can't change that. You can't make that different, can you?
No, you can't. I mean, this has genuinely just triggered off a memory that I know I may have talked about before, but you saying that, when I was a child, and my father was a very methodical man, if you remember, and he always did everything at the same time.
Yeah.
So at 6 o'clock in the evening, we walked the dog, which wasn't too bad in the summer. But, it's what it's brought back to me is that time when the clocks changed, because it was 6 o'clock when we walked. So now we were walking in the dark. My father didn't really talk. So we would just plod with the dog ahead.
Plod with the dog.
We plodded with the dog, and I found it so boring, except when it was raining, that autumn rain, and my father had this black umbrella, and now I remember as a child it being a huge umbrella. It probably wasn't. It was probably a very moderate umbrella, black umbrella, but he didn't want me to get wet, because that's not a
that would have been a bad idea.
Well, it would have been an immoderate thing to do.
Yes.
So as a result, he would tuck me right underneath his arm, really close in.
Yeah.
And I think it was one of the times when I felt safest in my life, because the dog would be going ahead, swishing its wet tail on us, And I would be totally safe because my father and many, many fathers of the time were not physically affectionate. And I was a very touchy-feely child. And there I was, walking along. And I think it does come down to what David said about being safe under the shadow of God's wing when things were at their toughest. And there is something, isn't there, about moving into these dark times when there are opportunities, maybe, I don't know what you think, but to experience something you don't experience at any other time. Whether, as in my case, I think I did understand a little bit about safety in a way that maybe I hadn't before, and that my father loved me. It wasn't just he didn't want to get me wet.
No, I'm sure
I think he enjoyed it as well.
Of course he did. But
and our Father God does love us, and the only way is to be tucked safely, closely in, isn't it?
But I think a lot of people would say, well, how on earth do you do that? I mean, looking back over my life as a trying follower of Jesus, I truly do value the moments when I have experienced that. I'd say they weren't that many, but some of them were very, very pungent and helpful, and they are like those things that you're given by the old lady in the fairy story that will help you when you get along the road a bit. You remember those, and they have helped me. And the journey from hope to certainty is the one we're on.
Yes.
We hope it will be all right. We hope we get there. We hope it sorts it. We hope that we will be aware of God like your Father looking after us. It doesn't always work out like that, but I'm definitely on that journey. I want to be on that journey, and I want to reach the end of it. And I think it increases my determination to be hopeful, to rejoice over every good thing that does happen, but to be completely truthful about how tough the journey can be at times on the way
and
to...
lonely.
And lonely, it can. It can. But, so, I mean, autumn for me, it kind of sums all that up. It has within it the death of the summer, and it's a bit hackneyed thing to say, but I promise that it will come back.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's what I mean about. I don't think I ever did believe it had died. I think because of my father's love for his garden, I did believe that it was being put to bed. It was being tidied away, ready for it to come back again. Yeah. And I suppose so.
Well,
yeah.
I wonder how you're doing with autumn. I hope you're coping or enjoying it. Yeah, whatever you think about it, let us know. Yeah. And we'll see you next week.
We will.
God bless you.
Bye-bye.